So, how do you explain to someone who has just arrived from Mars that in 8 days we went from being one lap behind to 1 second behind?
I think you need to look at the nature of the tracks really, and the tyres that were there. So I think Barcelona is a very challenging track. It's downforce is key there, and along with it car balance, and you need to generate good tyre temperature. Trying to make the hard tyres work is quite difficult. I mean, if you look at some of the smaller teams, they could never ever get the hard tyre working at all. So you've got quite a large spread in the speeds of the various cars, and that grows as the tyres get harder, basically. We ourselves, we had a few issues which we've been working on last week, and we now understand that were giving us some sort of particular issues that exaggerated at the problems that people have on the hard tyre. Hopefully we've got an understanding of that now, and have been working on fixing it. When you move to Monaco, it's quite a specific track. Again, you want as much downforce as you can. Efficiency doesn't really matter, and the way you drive Monaco is always different. So you're not attacking the corner entries as hard. It's more about being safe at the corner entries, fixing the mid-corner understeer and good traction. So you can change the setup of the car accordingly. And I think that the engineers did a good job this weekend or last weekend, and we were reasonably on top of the car balance all the way through the weekend. In qualifying we struggled a little bit. We analysed that on Saturday night, where we knew the problems we had. Race-wise, I mean, it would have been better if we had started further up the grid. But very good start again, and once you're there, Monaco is a bit of a procession really. So if you're not at the front, you're always struggling. So the pace of the car is reasonable, and it's not that hard a circuit in terms of tyres, and there were the soft and super soft tyre there, which makes it a lot easier.
Last year Montreal was one of the most fought races during the season. Do you expect the same this year?
I think it's certainly going to be a challenging race. In a way, it's a bit like Monaco, I suppose, where it's all about traction and braking. So the braking is always a challenge there, compared to Monaco. But for the traction and how the car uses the tyres at the corner exit will be very key for how quickly the rear tyres wear out. It's the same two compounds again as has been in the past. But if anything, I think it'll be slightly less trouble than last year because the compounds are that little bit harder.
What was more surprising for you, the four stops in Barcelona, or someone doing one stop only in Monaco?
I suppose I was actually more surprised by the variation of strategies in Monaco, to be honest. I mean, I think the soft tyre, so the prime tyre, did last quite well in Monaco. I think Vettel was pushing it to the limit what he did, and fortunately for him there was the red flag at the end of the race, because I'm sure those last few laps would have been quite a challenge for him. Barcelona, I think it's a very aggressive circuit on tyres, so you're always going to wear the rears and the left front out, because that's the nature of that track. In winter testing, the tyres maximum would have lasted 12 to 15 laps really, I suppose, about as much as we got out of a set of tyres there. So that was always going to be a multi-stop race. The surprising thing in Monaco was some people intentionally three-stopping, which was more of a surprise to me than the fact you could actually get through on a one-stop really. It was always, for me, between a one and a two-stop, depending how brave you wanted to be. A more sensible one-stop approach in Monaco would have been, get into sort of lap 28 or so, then I think it would have been a safe one-stop race. But stopping on lap 16 or whatever we did was obviously more of a challenge.
Montreal has always been very hard on brakes. Can you explain us how do you prepare for this task?
Well, we're always trying to optimise the car's aero performance and maximise that. So we always end up, running the brakes very hot at most circuits anyway. Montreal is obviously quite extreme. It's Montreal and Singapore are like the two hardest circuits we go to for brakes. But I expect, I expect a lot of other teams have a brake dyno where we will take last year's, a corner off last year's car. We'll run that through last year's cycle to braking cycle to tune the cooling levels of the test rig. We'll then put on this year's uprights and run through again. Obviously accounting for the different energy levels that we're expecting to try and see how safe we are, work out where the safety limits are and how much margin we've got.
Will there be any update on the Ferrari car?
It's there's a constant stream of updates really. So there's a few different parts coming through, a few little bits on the diffuser, a few bits on the rear wing. Reasonable performance step hopefully if everything works to plan.
And where do you think we're going to be in terms of competitiveness?
Well, hopefully, hopefully we're still closing the gap on all the other teams. Really, I mean, I'd say it's there's not been a lot of time between Monaco and Canada, but the nature of the tracks that they are relatively different from what you need in terms of aero. We've got specific rear wings that are just for that circuit. And then it's just a normal sort of push to try and get downforce on the car. So hopefully the gap's closing. Everyone else is pushing hard as well though, so it's a race.
On a more personal basis, it's a few days since you are in your new role. How life has changed?
I'm a little bit busier than I was. I didn't think that would be possible. I mean it's a great challenge. I mean I think there's lots of talented people here working very, very hard, and if we can actually focus them together and work out a sensible short-term and long-term plan, we will be moving forward very quickly, hopefully.
It's always said that Montreal is an engine track, a fuel consumption track. Is it really true?
It's true that people normally tend to say that Montreal is a very important track for engine. I would say it's not technically true. I would say it's important, but the power of the engine is not as important as in Monza or Spa. It's similar to a track like Malaysia or Brazil. In terms also of load of the engine, it's not extremely difficult for the engine to survive in Canada, being similar to Spain, for example, the percentage of wide open throttle. In terms of fuel consumption as well, we would say we still consider very important Canada for fuel consumption, but this is coming from the period where refueling was allowed. At that time, it was very important to have a single pit stop in Canada, and to make the first pit stop extremely late during the race, we had to put a very big fuel tank for this. Today, it is no longer. The dimension of the fuel tank is not coming from Canada specification. I would say mostly it's coming from Montreal. From Melbourne.
According to your analysis, how important is KERS for overtakings?
KERS is very important for lap time, and I would say a good usage of KERS can give you a reduction of 0.4 seconds per lap. But in terms of overtaking chances, it doesn't increase a lot. Even having more than 80 horsepower for 6 seconds, normally it's very difficult to overtake the car in front of you. But using KERS and DRS, so the reduced rear wing drag, that is possible to overtake the car in front of you. It's very interesting anyway to see, like this year, the usage of KERS has been very effective to reduce the chance to be overtaken. And in some races you have seen a driver that with a clever usage of gears has allowed them not to be overtaken, even the car on the rear could activate the DRS.
Engine life has increased a lot in the last few years. We would like to know how changes the usage of the engine from race 1 to race 3 or more.
I think that today every Formula 1 engine has been designed for at least being used for 3 races. Sometimes you may use it for 2 or 4, depending on your strategy, but the engine has to do 3 races, and typically the performance drop is extremely low. This is also thanks to the development that we have done with partners like Shell on fuels and lubricants. So normally the driver hardly feels any difference at the 3rd race. What is changing that the engine life has to be longer than the 3 races, because then it has to be used for free practice. During free practice we apply all our best to reduce the engine load to be sure that the engine can survive more than 2,000 kilometers. At that time, during free practice, definitely the driver can feel some different.
You are responsible also for electronics, an area which is no longer under the spotlight in the era of the standard ECU. What the electronic department do during the season?
I'm very happy to be able to talk a little bit about electronics. There is no longer a lot of discussion about electronics since we introduced the standard ECU, but the work and the reliability of the electronic system is fundamental for the car. You can imagine that we have several sensors in the car. Some of them are used during Friday to read car parameters that helps our strategy engineer to understand the car setup. We have some sensor giving info in terms of reliability and safety, things about all the sensors linked to the throttle. These are very important for safety. On top of this, we have some sensor going directly on the strategy of the system. If you imagine all the sensors in the gearbox, every Formula 1 gearbox would fail immediately if some sensors are failing. On top of this, since we introduced the gears, a new kind of electronic has been part of the Formula 1. We call it power electronics, means electronics dealing with high performance. This has been a new item for Formula 1 electronic specialists, but it is a very interesting and important area of car performance.